Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Engine Snack series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we're taking a look today at the game between Stockfish and Scorpio in the TCEC Season 22 Division P. This is one of two videos about this game. In this video we're taking a look at the middle game episode. It's quite striking because basically from the moment that Stockfish decided it was time to act on move 20 until about move 36, 37, basically things seem to be forced, which is very unusual. Black doesn't have a great King's Indian here after 19 moves. There's a little bit of pressure on the centre. The knight stacking the e4 pawn. You might have something like bishop takes c3, maybe giving up the valuable dark squared bishop to win that e4 pawn. But white can deal with that quite easily, and for the rest, black's pieces don't look that fantastic. What really is that rook on c8 doing, for example? And there's another thing that Stockfish exploits in this position, and that is the unstable position of the knight on c5, because Stockfish plays e5, and of course the idea that d takes c5 just allows bishop takes c5. The interesting thing is that, e5 attacks the d6 pawn, but white's definitely not aiming to win a pawn with e takes d6, c takes d6 and queen takes d6. Simply, the idea is that black's position is kind of held and restricted, paralysed with e5. So white's next idea will simply be to go g4 and move this bishop out of the way and play f5 and target this bishop on e6. So that explains why black plays knight d7. Just to get out of the attack that's of the bishop on f2 and to threaten d takes c5. But yeah, now we start following a line that Stockfish had already calculated when it played 20 e5. So it's this move g4, d takes c5, f5, takes, bishop f5. So that's two pawns already, and I mean, this tactic, the idea of breaking in the centre, letting black take the pawn and thereby blocking the h8 a1 diagonal and also the e file, so making two potentially active black pieces passive, and then playing an f5 break to open up the king side. It's known from the modern Benoni actually, so it's quite common. The only strange thing about it here is that, the way that you exploit it afterwards is very unusual. So knight e3 played, hitting the bishop on f5. Bishop goes back to e6. Yeah, you could also play bishop h3, but then I play rook g1 and then line up on the g file. It's going to be similar play to the game. So bishop d3 check, king h8, knight f5. In we go. We're hitting, threatening knight g7, knight h6. So takes. Hitting the knight on d7, the rook on c8 beyond it. Yeah, that rook on c8 again, not proving to be a very good piece. Knight d4, and now a very interesting move. Bishop e3 from Stockfish. And I mean, the idea of this move is to line up against the h6 pawn. You're not worrying at all about losing the bishop pair, because, after knight takes f5, rook takes f5, we've actually got a very large number of threats. We're hitting the knight on d7, we're hitting the pawn on f7 and the pawn on h6. So a lot of threats there. But actually, black has a resource that certainly fooled Scorpio into thinking that its position was not so bad. And this is a piece sacrifice, queen h4. So after queen takes d7, rook d8, queen a4, queen h3, hitting f5 and e3, black actually regains the piece. So, that actually seems to be completely fine for black. But Stockfish was not at all interested in the piece and played the move rook takes f7. So, really now threatening rook takes d7 and also obviously getting the rook to the 7th rank. And we go rook g1, rook g8, and now this is the real key move, the move that makes this all work. It's a quiet move, so not easy to see, not easy to evaluate, but it's a great one, rook g6. What is white's threat here? Well, actually the idea is simply to play rook takes g7 and then rook takes h6, forking the king and the queen. That's a really large threat, and it's very, very difficult to deal with. So there's a few ideas. I mean, rook f8 was the sneakiest thing that I came up with the idea that after rook g7, rook h6, you can play this move knight h7. And if rook h4, then rook f1 is checkmate. Haha. But actually what you can do, and again this is quite difficult to see, you play bishop f2, hitting the queen first, and only after queen h5 do you go rook g7. And of course, by playing the bishop to f2, you've blocked the entry point of the rook onto f1. Very, very nice. So knight g4 was played, which is a good idea again, hitting the bishop on e3, hitting h2, and also defending the pawn on h6. Bishop g1, but we've still got the same threats, and of course stuff like queen g2 is threatening now, and we're attacking the knight on g4 and also the bishop on g7 behind it. So actually there's only one idea for black, but after queen h5, and this is the difficult thing, the thing that's so hard to spot, there's actually a tactical weakness in the position, but it's not what you'd expect. But again, it goes back to that stupid rook on c8, which is exposed to queen d7 check. Yeah, I mean, if black still had the rook on a8, all these combinations simply wouldn't work. It's yeah, amazing how details like that can be important sometimes. Well, black had to play queen f7. Obviously, queen c8, as suggested by Mr. Beads, kind of loses to queen f3 check. But we go queen g4 check, king h7, queen e4 check, queen g6, queen b7. And well, white's got two good pieces for the rook, yeah, Stockfish won this without any problems, although there was still a very fascinating bit of the game that we'll have a look at in another video. But really wonderful play from Stockfish, great kingside attack, and well, to see everything from this moment on to this moment is stunning calculation. Brilliant play from Stockfish.